Welcome to 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Dr. Vivian Carlin. Between our two households, we're navigating life with 10 children, so we know how chaotic parenting can be. As Johns Hopkins trained pediatricians, we also know the science. Our goal is to bring you the best of both worlds, medically sound, trustworthy advice, and practical, real-world insights as we dive into the trials and triumphs of parenting. Please note this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor. So today we are going to tackle a big topic, and that is gaming and video gaming. We haven't done screens in a while, so I'm excited to get back to screens and talk about video gaming and our advice as pediatricians on how to tackle that very large influence on our children.
Yeah, sounds good.
Why don't we start by talking about our own experiences with gaming or video gaming?
Yeah, I would start off by saying that we know from the data that's out there that the prevalence of gaming addiction is much higher in boys than it is in girls. Yeah. And I will say it's been very apparent from the time my kids were toddlers that the way my boys interact with any type of video game is different than the way my girls have interacted with video games.
I would say that's pretty much the same for me as well. Definitely my worries kind of fall from that addictive quality for my boys, right?
Yeah. I would notice even at a young age, it was like the way it would sit on their minds was different.
Right. And it perseverates where they reflect, they talk about it, they will even verbalize strategy.
I agree. It was also that sense of like, hey, I just finished this video game. Let me recount for you every second of what happened. Yes. Right?
Absolutely. Like it is the most engaging thing in their lives.
Yes.
When they started playing Minecraft when they were little and, I could make them do things, I used to require them to journal about it too. So part of being allowed to play Minecraft over the summer, when you have more time and there's no school, was that they could play and then they would have to journal about what they did in Minecraft. And that was how I tried to incorporate some sort of IRL component to the gaming if I was going to allow them to play, right?
I love this hack.
Right. And they didn't mind doing it because it allowed them to have time to play.
Yes.
And then
very
they
motivated.
Want to recount and perseverate about it, and they would just write it down in a journal.
So I think my funniest gaming story comes from my oldest son. During the pandemic, everybody's at home. Everybody is now online, right? Mm-hmm. That was so tough. They all have access to their Chromebook or their computer or whatever. And he was one of my ones that's a little bit more on the introverted side. And, all 8 of us are at home and he is just begging for more time in his room. And, he wants time in his room to game. He wants time in his room to do his schoolwork, where I'm used to anything on the computer here in front of us in the kitchen. We kind of lighten those rules and we're like, okay, we hear you. You would like some more downtime where it's quiet and we're going to let you go to your room. Well, months go by. And my older daughter's boyfriend was over doing school with us during the pandemic. And he came to me and he was like, Mrs. Carlin, do you realize how good your son is at Rocket League? And,
I know this.
Yes, Rocket League's it's one of the games I like, right? It just involves the soccer ball and the cars. And I'm like, no, I don't know. How good is he? He's like, no, you don't understand. He's achieved that top 1% level and is on the verge of being nationally ranked. And I'm like, what? I almost felt this sense of loss that here he was excelling in something that I had no idea. But the crazy thing about that story is that what my son would say now, years later, is he would say, yeah, I had to experience it and kind of conquer it. And then I hit the point where, this is what he says, I discovered girls and then I didn't care about video games anymore. Yes. And I kind of feel like as a parent, there's part of me that feels like I kind of just got lucky. And there was something about him that didn't develop into an addictive, I can't let it go. Mm-hmm. And that aspect is so incredibly hard to predict. This is what scares me.
Yeah. I feel like that there's 2 models when your child is young in how you allow video games. One model is a very restrictive model where you control the video games, you control the time, you teach them how to not do it. And this was, if anyone listened to our previous episode on screens and time, this is how I raised my children when they were in elementary and early middle school, right? Restriction, limited time, limited access. And then the hope is that it's not part of their routine and then they don't seek it out. The flip side of that is that if you restrict it so much when they're young, as soon as they have any access to it, they are crazy about it. They crave it. It's like the forbidden fruit where I've never gotten to play this. And one might remember from that episode where I told the story of my son at the sleepover where he stayed up all night long playing some Pokemon game, right? Because he was so restricted. And then I've heard other parents in discussing video games with them is that you allow your child to have access to video games and they reach this point where you described, where they play it and then suddenly they get it out of their system. I've done that. I know what it's like. I know some of the minuses of being on it all the time, and it's out of my system and I don't need to be on it all the time anymore. So I feel like those are the two models that I hear of how parents kind of approach video games and allowing their child to either restrict or exhaust themselves and kind of overdose and then get it out of their system.
Right. And unfortunately, the problem is we don't know which model works best for which kid, right?
Yeah.
If we had a formula and data to say, okay, this model prevents gaming addiction, then we would all do it. But we don't have that. And I've had a very different strategy with each of my kids. I have a son with ADHD, and my philosophy has been to restrict him very much as we're progressing further and further into brain development, because I just know the way it stimulates his brain is different. So he gets to play Minecraft and he gets to earn that time. He doesn't play any of the high stimulation, high risk reward, more addictive video games. I just know that about him, that it's not a good decision right now. But I recognize I can't just let him get to 18 and then be like, okay, all limits are off, go have fun.
No, I totally hear what you're saying, Vivian. You're absolutely right. There has to be a time when your child has access to video games and be able to regulate themselves at the same time. I think for some children, this is earlier or later than others. For our family, this happened around the late middle school, early high school time when they began to have more access to video games. And it was mainly mobile gaming, like on their cellular device or their iPad, and some laptop gaming, mainly I think isolated to Minecraft. And there was, I think, a little StarCraft in there for a while. For us, our goal was for them to be able to conduct a normal life while having access to video games. And this normal life was defined by they're getting enough sleep at night, their academics are not affected, they're still pursuing other interests outside of video gaming and engaging in social activity in real life with friends. Another important metric was like around the household, how they were treating both us as their parents and their siblings. Like, were they speaking respectfully? Did they have normal interactions with them? And were they getting their chores done? Things were just kind of continuing like they should have in their lives outside of video gaming. If they appeared to be navigating life normally and still having like increased access to video games, then we considered this successful self-regulation. And it gave us a little bit more confidence that once they were out of our household, post high school, maybe in college or living by themselves, that they would actually continue to have a fruitful, productive life, right?
I love the story of how your philosophy changed as they went into middle school and high school.
I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some dangers of video gaming. And I actually speak of this in the well visit when we talk about screens. So there has been more and more concern on certain platforms. Usually it's Roblox. That's a very popular game for younger children. And the potential in certain settings of Roblox for strangers to get in touch with children. I usually warn parents that this is a feature of the game that their child is playing and that there are options to prevent your child's visibility to strangers on the video game site. And then also engage them in conversation. Has anyone tried to contact you on this platform? Or is there a chat where people are engaging you? Just to keep that line of conversation open with your kids, just in case something happens, they can chime up and feel free to tell you, right, in a very open way.
Right. Like we've talked about with other abuse prevention, opening the doors of communication is over half the battle, 95% of the battle. Regularly ask your children, make them aware.
And then I make the parents aware during the well visit. And then I actually ask the child at the well visit, like, has anyone contacted you on a chat or anything? And then I also inform the children that even though they say they're another child, they might not be a child.
I'd like to transition to in the second half is, I think if we're aware of the symptoms of gaming disorder or gaming addiction, we can use that kind of criteria to educate our children, but also to educate ourselves as to what to look for if problems are arising.
No, that sounds great.
Let me start by just giving a little background on this as a diagnosis. So the DSM-5, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, which is the sort of Bible, quote unquote, for psychiatry in the US, in 2013, they added internet gaming disorder, but not as a diagnosis. It was classified as a condition that required more clinical research before being formally integrated into the manual. Now, in 2018, the WHO, the World Health Organization, did add gaming disorder as an ICD-11 code. Those are the codes that we use for billing in medicine. So it's recognized by the WHO. It's not recognized as a disorder by the American Psychiatric Association. Nonetheless, we have criteria from both of those of what gaming addiction looks like. And I think this is very much in line with sort of the rubric we're using for, is what they're doing becoming a problem? And I would just want our listeners to be aware that these are things that I would talk about with my children as well, so that I could empower them. Hey, be on guard. If you're seeing these things, if I'm seeing these things, we're going to talk about that. So one of the things is preoccupation, right? They are just thinking about it. We said perseverating on it all the time. And that can be normal, right? That doesn't necessarily mean they're an addict, but if it's in line with other criteria as well, then it might be a problem. Another one is withdrawal. Like they go through withdrawal when the game is taken away. They're irritable, they're anxious, they get mad, they're sad when the game is taken away. Another is tolerance. I mean, these are principles of all kinds of addiction, right? That need to spend increasing amounts of time gaming to feel the same level of excitement, right? Like it's just not enough anymore. I want more and more and more. Another one is loss of control, so that they can set in their mind, I'm going to quit at this time, or I'm only going to play this many times this week, and they just can't. They can't follow through on that. Another is loss of interest in other things. So you see that they're becoming more withdrawn socially. They're giving up other hobbies. They're doing less things like out at school or out of the house, because really all they want to be doing is being in front of the computer gaming instead. Continued overuse. So even if it's interfering with other problems in life, that inability to limit the time and just continuing to overuse it to the point that it's interfering with studies and homework. Deception. So is there a pattern of lying to family members or even therapists about how much they actually game? Escape. Is there a sense of like, I'm so stressed and frustrated and angry, and I just need to go get on my game because that will calm me down? And then is it jeopardizing relationships, career for adults, or school, right? So to your point, are you seeing grades dropping? Are you seeing homework not getting turned in? Are you seeing like less time being spent with other family members, or like an irritation with other family members because you're just not interested in those interpersonal relationships as much anymore? And it takes multiple of those over the course of a year to actually have a diagnosis. But all of those are things for us to be aware of as we're watching our children and as we're counseling our children, especially as they enter into adulthood. Watch out for these things and making them aware of the downward effects. It might seem so innocent at first, but the downward effects if you're seeing this and you're not trying to put a stop to it.
Yeah. No, I think those are good guidelines as an indicator. Are my kids okay? Are they not okay? And also a self-awareness for an older adolescent. Make them aware that these things are changing who you are and how you interact with people in your life, right? So I think awareness is definitely key there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, with my example with my son and Rocket League, as much as I wanted to be afraid of, wow, I'm raising a gaming addict, it's all downhill from here, all hope is lost. I could objectively look at this and say, he is actually doing all of these other things as well. So
Yes.
he's using his time online. He actually, using YouTube, taught himself how to play piano during the pandemic. He taught himself how to do really sophisticated yo-yo tricks. He was getting all of his homework done. His grades were good. Like, there were these other criteria where I'm like, okay. And he's now studying computer science. This is a child who enjoys engaging and learning information online, but he clearly has interests in all these other areas. He clearly has friends outside of this, interpersonal relationships, like everything else looks good. We're going to continue to ride this and monitor it with a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
At this point, I'd like to review what the AAP has on their healthychildren.org. A lot of this we've covered, but they do have a sheet called Unhealthy Video Gaming, What Parents Can Do to Prevent It. And they cite that 10% of adolescents have symptoms at some point of unhealthy gaming that tend to get worse over time. It is more likely to be boys, they say that. Some of the signs are that they play video games at the expense of homework, sleep, exercise, or relationships with family and friends, and that they're also likely to also exhibit signs of depression, anxiety, shyness, aggression. Kids with ADHD may be more vulnerable too. So they point out here that's because video gaming is like gambling. It activates the reward system in the brain, and we know that that's very addictive. They also have a list of just unhealthy symptoms to watch for from that criteria that I listed off. It's not an official diagnosis in the US of gaming disorder, although that may be coming soon, but it is listed in our criteria as something that needs more study. And it's the same types of things: using gaming when you're in a bad mood to make you feel better, lying about your gaming, no longer being interested in anything else, wanting more and more gaming time, like it's never enough, and then just obsessed with thinking about the game. And, then I like this. On the flip side, they talk about, well, what are ways to help avoid unhealthy gaming? And first and foremost, have a family media plan. I know this is so much easier said than done. We've spent some episodes talking about this. The burden that is on parents these days to make sure that all of the checks and all of the restrictions and all of the time limits on every device are in place, and that your child isn't getting around those. I mean, it's like a full-time job that none of us really wanted. So, but having that family media plan, at least thinking about it and trying, being mindful about how your child is using their video games, which we talked about, like watching for if you're seeing any of these other signs, keeping the gaming in common areas. That was always something that we tried to do, although we made that exception during the pandemic. And then playing games along with them. Although I have to admit, anytime my kids have drawn me in to play a video game with them, even Minecraft, I am like, I just don't
I'm not very good at
like
video games
it.
either.
I'm not
Yeah.
very good at this. And then focus on real world games, like the actual physical games. I was really happy because two of my children were playing chess on my husband's phone the other day. And my daughter said, you know what? I can't play this way. Like, I'm a much better player when I can physically touch the pieces. So I will say, I feel like for another thing I found with my children as they become adults, as they choose how and when and where they engage with their faith, this becomes an issue of how are you using your time? Is it wisely? Is it for God's glory? And in that way, it's imparting on them their own conscience, right? Like I can't tell you anymore, like you should do this, you shouldn't do this. But if I have equipped you to make your own decisions and you realize like, this is not a valuable use of my time for the greater good. Like I need to be using the gifts I've been given in other ways. That's where you really want to be, where it's like, okay, great. You monitor yourself, right? And you figure out how to use your time.
No, absolutely. Something that's like a self-check, right?
Yes.
A reflection of self, right? So hopefully in this episode, I think one of the prevailing thoughts is that gaming and gaming addiction can be variable. Certain children are more prone to it. Others are not. Unfortunately, there's not just one formula to prevent addiction in certain children. And, we can encourage parents to be involved, have a family media plan, be aware of the pitfalls and what gaming addiction looks like, and inform your child what that looks like. So everyone can be aware and hopefully prevent that from happening.
I think if we're aware of the symptoms of gaming disorder or gaming addiction, we can use that kind of criteria to educate our children, but also to educate ourselves as to what to look for if problems are arising. While we don't have the answers, I hope that we've at least given you a lot of information to think about so that you can make the best decisions for you and your child and your family unit as you go forward in trying to navigate video games.
This is 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank.
And I'm Dr. Vivian Carlin. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.